Hello and welcome back. We're going to be continuing this series on from our introduction about the phases of learning physical skills. And we're going to start off with one of the biggest bits of research that you can come across if you're trying to get better at a sport, and that is deliberate practice. So if you haven't heard of this, it'll be transformational for you, and I highly recommend you do some additional reading on this topic. Have you ever wondered why some kayakers seem to progress so much more quickly than others? Secret might not be in how much they practice. The secret might be how they practice. For me, I've done a lot of something called casual practice, where you just kind of go out and do stuff. This type of practice can take you pretty far, but it will have a limit. To move past that limit or plateau, the answer is usually deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is a highly structured activity aimed at improving performance in a specific domain. It was described by psychologist Ericsson and his colleague in a landmark 1993 study. And if you haven't, please read the book Peak by Ericsson and Robert Poole, which describes this whole process. It's also from this book where you actually get the concept of 10,000 hours of deliberate practice can make you a master of something. Unlike casual practice, deliberate practice is characterized by several key elements, something that we will keep revisiting these elements as we go through these next few videos. First of all, it's purposeful and focused on improving particular aspects of performance. It involves repetition and refinement of skills. It requires continuous feedback that's either from a coach or through self-assessment, how you feel on the water or video review. It often involves practicing outside of your comfort zone. It demands your full attention and concentration. So just take a moment to think about your last training session that you did for freestyle. Are you actually doing all of these? And how are you doing all of these? How are you addressing all of these points? In freestyle kayaking, deliberate practice means going beyond simply paddling for fun. It involves setting specific goals, breaking down complex moves into manageable parts, and consistently working on areas that need improvement. Research has shown that this type of focused, intentional practice is what separates expert performers from amateurs, in fields ranging from music to sports to chess to pretty much everything. By applying these principles to freestyle kayaking, we can hopefully accelerate our own skill development and reach higher levels. While researching this, I came across some research that has actually been getting a lot more attention in the fields of sports science and sports psychology, and it's specifically about youth athletes or junior athletes. And it's called deliberate play. This is something I'll talk about in a separate video targeted more specifically at younger athletes, mainly because most of the current research that is around is about adults, as from an ethical point of view, from or other reasons, it's much easier to do research on adults than kids. So if you're a younger athlete watching this video or the parent of a younger athlete, do be aware that there is a bit of a difference between deliberate practice and deliberate play, and deliberate practice might not necessarily be the exact perfect right thing for all junior athletes. In this video series, we'll explore how to apply deliberate practice techniques in various aspects of freestyle kayaking. Today we're starting out with in-the-boat training. But remember, this is just one piece of the puzzle. The key is to approach all your training with a deliberate, focused mindset. I'm going to split up the in-the-boat practice that you can do into 4 different categories. Those categories are flatwater, isolation, integration, and differentiation. This is not an exhaustive list, but is more about the different categories that training techniques can fall into. Training techniques can fall into just one of these categories, or it can bridge across more than one category. Now, let's break down our first in-the-boat deliberate practice technique. This one is very well known, and it's flatwater practice. Now, this might sound simple, but what you really need to focus on is emulating the movements that you'll need to do in actual features, rather than just replicating the definition that you're required to do according to the appendix. There can be a big difference between doing a move on flat water as it says in the rulebook and doing it in a hole as it says in the rulebook. One that springs to mind to me is the phonics. There's a big difference between doing it as per the definition on flat water and as per the definition in a hole. Most of the time, if you try and do a phonics the same way you might on flat water in a hole, it won't work out very well for you. As you're doing freestyle on flat water, it's very important to get feedback on your practices through video review or through coach support. You need to make sure you refine the skill and improve that execution throughout your time using flat water. It's not just, I've done it, I've completed it, I'm going to move on. It is, how do I get this closer? How do I give more benefit to my hole boating from this flat water? So the research behind this is known as contextual interference and can enhance skill retention and transfer. I'll put the link to that research down below. So by practicing in a different context, you're challenging your brain to adapt, which can improve your performance when you return to the feature. Now, if you're one of the lucky ones to have a consistent feature exactly where you live and turn your nose up the idea of doing flat water, think back to one of our rules of deliberate practice. It often involves practicing outside of one's comfort zone. If you have a good feature near you, it's still beneficial to do flat water. If you don't have a good feature near you, it's beneficial to do flat water as long as you keep to the principles that I have on the screen. Our next possible training tool, another one that can be done in our boat, is isolation. This is where we break down the trick into smaller components. Practice these components in isolation, focusing on one element at a time. This method's called part practice in sports science and has been shown to be effective for complex skill acquisition. And this is going all the way back to 1963 with Naylor and Briggs. And if freestyle is anything, it is complex skills. Now, it can be difficult to identify these small parts as a beginner or even sometimes as an expert. And this is where using the resources from your coaches is incredibly useful. If you don't have a coach, using a resource like Bartosz's book, Freestyle Unlocked, is extremely useful. At some point, however, you might find there is a limit to books and coaching. In this case, it is important that you learn to identify these components yourself. I will talk about how you can learn to identify these small parts during my future video that's all about video review. Breaking the tricks down into small parts is how we move through phases of physical skill acquisition. By breaking them down into small parts, we start to bring those different parts to the autonomous phase of the physical skills learning. This can allow us to improve different factors of a trick independently. This reduces the cognitive load and can allow for faster progression. Here's some tips for effective isolation practice. Use video review analysis to identify which parts of a move need the most work. Be specific about each isolated component and gradually increase the difficulty as you improve with this. Remember, the key to isolation is patience and focus. It might not feel exciting as throwing full moves that you can already do, but the payoff in skill development is enormous. By breaking down the complex moves and perfecting each component, you're building a rock-solid foundation for better moves later on and for your freestyle as a whole. In this section, I will talk about integration. This is something that paddlers do naturally, and it's all about building fluid sequences. When you begin to execute individual components of a trick, it's time to integrate them into a cohesive sequence. In sports science, this is called chunking. This is where the magic happens and you start to develop a more fluid and natural paddling style, transitioning between tricks smoothly. So what is chunking? Chunking refers to the ability to group individual movements into a fluid sequence. This concept was first introduced by RSW Masters in 1992. Chunking is essential in freestyle kayaking as it allows you to perform complex moves with ease and precision. And it also forms the basis of your freestyle competition ride. So how do you integrate tricks? You can integrate them immediately before another trick. For example, if you're working on loop, try performing a spin immediately before the loop. Or if you are working on the loop, try performing a loop immediately before the loop. The point is to focus on the transitions between the tricks. You can integrate a trick after as well. By integrating tricks, you're challenging your brain and body to adapt to new sequences and transitions. This approach helps you develop a more robust understanding of how to link moves together seamlessly. My tips for effective integration are: start off with simple combinations. Start with simple combinations. Begin with simple trick combinations and gradually increase the difficulty as you become more comfortable. Really focus on the transitions. Pay attention to the transitions between tricks, ensuring that you're maintaining your speed, your control, and your fluidity. Practice in both directions. Practice integrating tricks in both directions, performing the trick before or after another trick. If you do it right, then do it left. If you do it left, then do it right. By performing integration into your deliberate practice routine, you'll be able to perform complex moves with greater ease and precision and style. Remember, the key is to focus on the fluid transitions in between moves and seamless sequences. This will ultimately elevate your freestyle kayaking skills to new levels. Our final part of in the boat practice is differentiation. This is all about pushing beyond your comfort zone. This is where you challenge yourself to changing variables and practicing outside your comfort zone. This is where you take your skills to the next level by adapting to new and unfamiliar situations. This is where you become a true master of the skill. Differentiation is crucial in deliberate practice because it helps you develop a more robust understanding of the skill. By practicing in different conditions and scenarios, you're forced to adapt and adjust your technique, which enhances your overall proficiency. So the question is, how do you differentiate your practice? The first and easiest way is to practice in different features. I know that's quite easy to say, I'll just go out and paddle a different feature, where some people who are watching this video will only have flat water. A great way to get a huge variety of different features is to try and paddle freestyle on ocean waves. These waves are constantly changing and turbulent, going from sloped or steep glassy green waves to steep drop-ins, big rowdy broken waves or holes, and then into small low-powered broken waves. Just in one wave going from out back to shore, you will get a massive difference in variability of your practice. Another tip for this is to paddle in features or holes that are notoriously not good. If you can do a trick in a hole that people think it's impossible to do the trick in, that means you really truly understand that trick. Or you got lucky, but if you can get lucky once, you can get lucky again. The next one to do is to practice at different water levels. So by practicing at different water levels, it allows you to adapt to the changing situations. This is where freestyle paddlers in Ireland are quite fortunate, as they can paddle in tidal features. These tidal features will change throughout the session, allowing them to become very adaptable paddlers to the changing situations. Next we have practicing right and left moves. This might seem simple, but practicing on your left side, even if you don't like it, will help you develop greater overall control and coordination. It'll improve your ability to paddle with both sides, enhance your spatial awareness and ability to read the water. Practicing on your left side or your right side will also help you develop a more symmetrical paddling style, making you more a well-rounded kayaker. Our last one is try practicing in a different boat or with different equipment. Try practicing a longer or shorter boat. Try practicing a boat with a different hull design or shape. Try practicing in a boat with a different weight or volume. Try practicing in a really small boat. Try practicing in a really big boat. Practicing in a different boat will help you develop a better understanding of how to adapt your technique to different designs and situations. The practice of variability through differentiation has been shown to enhance skill adaptability and transfer in 2013 by Schmidt and Lee, one of the links in the description. By differentiating your practice, you'll develop a more robust understanding of the skill, making you more adaptable in various conditions. So I've got some tips for effective differentiation. Start small. You don't need to jump into a feature you've never been in before with unfamiliar kit and only practice on your offside. Do some small changes alongside your normal practice. Supplement your normal practice with bits of differentiation, especially when you are in the early stages of learning a skill. Conversely, increase the difficulty. As you become more comfortable with differentiation and with the skill you're working on, gradually increase the difficulty by introducing more significant changes to your practice. Focus on adaptation. Pay attention to how you're adapting to the new conditions and make adjustments as needed. In this new feature, are you trying to do the technique exactly as you always do, or are you adapting your new skill? It can be difficult to go to a feature where it feels like you can't do any tricks, but the payoff is more advanced skill acquisition and adaptability. Don't forget to review and adjust. Regularly review your practice and make adjustments to your technique as needed. This will become part of your video review routine. By incorporating differentiation into your deliberate practice routine, you'll be able to develop a more robust understanding of the skill, making you a more adaptable and proficient freestyle kayaker. As we wrap up this exploration of deliberate practice in freestyle kayaking, I get that after a long video, it just boils down to a bit of flatwater practice, break down the skills, do more than one trick at a time, and practice in different features. I get that it all sounds super simple, but from what I have seen, not everyone, including myself, is making full use of all of these strategies. Some people only focus on one area at a time, or only ever focus on one area. Development in freestyle is about utilizing all of these strategies in tandem to help with your overall development. Now, some of you will be sitting there thinking, well, none of this is new information. I already knew to do all this. And yeah, for some people it's going to be super basic. As I said in the last part, I want to build this base of knowledge before we move on to other stuff. Because if we are not doing this deliberate practice, we are not addressing an area that would have the biggest benefit to our skill development. The strategies I'll talk about later on are extremely useful, but if you're not doing deliberate practice, you're not doing the bare minimum that you should be doing. Now, remember, the essence of deliberate practice lies in its structured, focused approach. This structured, focused approach should come from your coach or yourself. It's not just about spending hours in the water, but about making each moment you're on the water count towards your improvement. By emulating movements on flatwater, breaking tricks down into isolated components, integrating skills into fluid sequences, and challenging yourself through differentiation, you're setting yourself up for significant process. Deliberate practice may not always feel as immediately rewarding as casual paddling, but the long-term benefits are immense. You're not just practicing, you're building a deeper understanding of the sport, developing adaptability, and laying the groundwork for mastering these tricks. As you apply these principles to your training, keep in mind, progress isn't always linear. There will be challenges and setbacks, and that's part of the process. Stay patient, stay focused, and trust in this process. This is just the first video speaking specifically about deliberate practice. In my next video, I'll be talking about the deliberate practice that you can do outside of the boat. And then in the video after that, I'll be talking about how you can use your deliberate practice routines in your video review. This will help you give good quality feedback to yourself and your coach. As always, I'm just one person doing the best research I can on my own. If you have anything you want to add to this topic, leave it down below and I'll have a look at it. So, get out there, apply these techniques and see how your skills transform. Embrace the process, enjoy the journey, and I'll see you on the water, and I'll see you next time.